In the heart of a bustling city, filled with towering skyscrapers and cobblestone streets, two lives unknowingly barreled toward each other, destined to intertwine in ways neither could foresee. On one end was David Peterson, a man of privilege and precision, a fundraiser, a planner, and a proud son of a family steeped in tradition. On the other was Amara Johnson, a fiercely resilient woman who bore the weight of her struggles with quiet grace, raising her three children alone in a world that often seemed determined to exclude her. This was not a story of immediate connection. It wasn't love at first sight, nor a romance spun from fairy tales. Instead, it was a story born from conflict and doubt, shaped by resilience and empathy. Their first meeting wasn't orchestrated by fate in a quiet park or a chance encounter in a quaint cafe. No, their paths crossed amidst tension and debate at a charity gala, an event polished with glamour, but rife with hidden biases. What began as a mere exchange of words and ideals soon grew into something deeper, forcing David and Amara to confront not only the prejudices around them, but the ones buried within themselves. Together, they would navigate a labyrinth of judgment, hardship, and redemption, proving that love, no matter how improbable, can carve out a space even in the most unforgiving of landscapes. This is their story, a tale of courage, love, and unyielding hope in the face of adversity. A journey that starts with a clash, but grows into something transformative. The hall glittered with chandeliers that reflected the opulence of the city's elite, their polished shoes echoing across marble floors. Waitstaff darted between conversations, carrying trays of champagne flutes and bite-sized hors d'oeuvres, their movements seamless yet unnoticed. In one corner of the room stood David Peterson, a calculated observer of this annual charity event that his family had helped organize for years. A glass of wine in hand, he smiled at donors and board members, his every word measured and courteous. Then came the voice, strong, unwavering, and unmistakable. Why do we only extend help to people who look like us? It wasn't loud, but it carried through the room with a force that turned heads. David shifted his gaze toward the source of the disruption. Standing at the other end of the hall was a striking woman in a simple yet elegant dress. Her hair, natural and untamed, framed her face with the kind of intensity that commanded attention. Her children stood nearby, their wide eyes darting across the sea of unfamiliar faces. The woman's voice, resolute yet tinged with frustration, sliced through the air again. This charity speaks of inclusion, yet it excludes the very communities that need support the most. How is that fair? A murmur spread through the crowd. Some whispered, while others exchanged side glances, unsure of how to react. David didn't know her name yet, but something about her presence struck a chord. Perhaps it was the way she stood, proud and unyielding, or the subtle tremor in her hands, betraying nerves she refused to let surface. Whatever it was, it drew him toward her like a moth to a flame. "Who does she think she is?" a voice muttered nearby, dripping with disdain. David recognized it as belonging to one of the event's major donors, a woman whose influence could silence most. But not this woman, not Amara. "Excuse me, but I think I have the right to question the integrity of an organization if I've donated my time and resources to be here," Amara countered, her gaze locked with the donors, unflinching. David found himself moving toward the commotion, his feet propelled by a mix of curiosity and an inexplicable need to defend this stranger. By the time he reached her side, the tension in the room was palpable. "Thank you for speaking up," David interjected, his voice calm yet firm. It's rare to see someone challenge the status quo with such conviction. Amara turned to him, her expression softening, though her eyes remained sharp. Someone has to, she said, her voice quieter now, but no less determined. If no one does, nothing changes. It was in that brief exchange that David glimpsed something he hadn't seen in a long time: authenticity. This wasn't a woman trying to impress anyone or curry favor. She was simply speaking her truth. Consequences be damned. He introduced himself. David Peterson, he said, extending his hand. Amara Johnson, she replied, her handshake firm, her children watching the exchange with curiosity. They spent the next few minutes talking by the refreshment table, where the warmth of Amara's laughter surprised even herself. She spoke of her struggles as a single mother, her pride in her children, and her frustration with a society that seemed intent on boxing them into limited spaces. David listened, captivated not just by her words, but by the way she carried herself, with an unshakable sense of dignity. "Mom?" One of her children tugged at her sleeve, breaking the moment. Amara smiled at the little girl, her expression softening in a way that made David's heart tighten. As she prepared to leave, David found himself blurting out, "Would you like to grab a coffee sometime?" just to continue the conversation. Amara hesitated, her guard momentarily lifting to reveal a flicker of vulnerability. "I don't know," she said cautiously. "It's not easy navigating these worlds." "I'd like to try," David said simply, sincerity etched into every word. Amara studied him for a long moment before giving a small nod. "All right," she said, "but don't expect this to be easy." As she walked away, David felt the weight of the room's eyes on him. A colleague sidled up, his tone laced with sarcasm. "You've got guts, Peterson. Mixing with controversy isn't exactly your brand." David said nothing, his gaze fixed on Amara's retreating figure. He didn't know what he was getting himself into, but something told him it was worth finding out. The world around David seemed to slow in the days following his encounter with Amara. The echo of her words, firm and unapologetic, replayed in his mind like a song stuck on repeat. He found himself questioning everything: the charity event's true purpose, the polished veneer of his social circle, and, most perplexingly, the guarded spark of intrigue he felt for a woman whose life and struggles were worlds apart from his own. Sitting in his office late one evening, David stared at his computer screen, pretending to work while his thoughts wandered. Outside, the city buzzed with life, cars honking, people rushing home. But inside his corner office, there was only silence. His phone buzzed, jolting him from his reverie. It was a text from a colleague. "Quite the scene at the gala, huh? Didn't peg you as the type to be drawn to drama." David sighed, tossing the phone aside. The comment stung more than it should have, revealing the unspoken tension he already felt. What would people think if they saw him with Amara? How would his family react? And yet, amidst all the noise in his head, one thought stood out. What kind of man would I be if I let fear dictate my choices? Across town, Amara stood in her modest kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, as her youngest son, Elijah, sat at the table working on his math homework. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air, a comforting contrast to the weight pressing on her chest. She had replayed the gala in her mind dozens of times, second-guessing every word she had spoken. Standing up for what was right always came at a cost, and this time, it felt like she had laid bare not just her convictions, but her vulnerabilities. "Mom?" Elijah's voice broke through her thoughts. "Why was that man at the party staring at you?" Amara paused, the wooden spoon in her hand hovering over the pot. "What man, baby?" "The one who talked to you," Elijah said, his small brow furrowed in thought. "He didn't look mean. He just looked curious." Amara smiled faintly, ruffling Elijah's curls. "That man was probably just surprised," she said. "Not everyone is used to hearing the truth spoken out loud." Elijah nodded, satisfied with her answer. But Amara's mind lingered on the question. David had been kind, yes, but kindness from his world often came with strings attached, and she couldn't afford to let her guard down. It was 3 days later when David finally worked up the courage to reach out. He found Amara's business card tucked into his jacket pocket and hesitated before dialing the number. His heart raced as the phone rang, and he rehearsed what he might say, each version sounding worse than the last. "Hello." Her voice was calm but distant, and David almost forgot how to speak. "Hi, Amara. This is David Peterson, from the gala." There was a brief silence before she replied. "I remember. How can I help you, Mr. Peterson?" David winced at the formality. "Please, call me David," he said. "I was wondering if you'd like to grab coffee sometime. I'd love to continue our conversation from the other night." Amara hesitated, and David could almost feel her skepticism through the phone. "I don't know," she said cautiously. "I'm not sure what we'd talk about." "Anything," David said quickly. "Or nothing. I admire your perspective, and I'd like to hear more about it." There was another pause, and then, to his surprise, she agreed. "All right," she said. "But just coffee. Nothing more." The coffee shop was small and unassuming, a world away from the upscale venues David was used to. Amara arrived first, sitting by the window with a book in her hands. When David walked in, he noticed the way the late afternoon sunlight framed her face, casting a golden glow over her determined expression. For a moment, he simply stood there, unsure how to bridge the gap between them. "You're staring," Amara said, without looking up, a hint of amusement in her voice. David chuckled, pulling out a chair. "Caught me," he admitted. "But in my defense, you're not easy to miss." Amara raised an eyebrow, her lips twitching into the faintest of smiles. "Flattery won't get you anywhere, Mr. Peterson." "David," he corrected. "And it's not flattery, it's the truth." Their conversation began tentatively, with David asking questions about Amara's work and her children. She answered with measured honesty, her words revealing a life marked by resilience and quiet sacrifice. She spoke of the systemic hurdles that made it harder for families like hers to thrive, of the moments when even small victories felt monumental. "Do you ever get tired?" David asked suddenly, his voice soft. Amara looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Every day," she said. "But tired isn't the same as defeated. My mother used to say, 'Stand tall, even when the world tries to make you small.' She lived by those words, and so do I." David felt a lump rise in his throat. He had never met anyone like Amara, someone who carried so much on her shoulders, yet refused to let it break her. In her, he saw a strength that both humbled and inspired him. As they left the cafe, a pair of David's colleagues walked by, their eyes darting between him and Amara. One of them smirked, leaning in to whisper something to the other. David felt a pang of unease, but he forced himself to ignore it. Amara, however, caught the exchange and stiffened. "This is why I hesitated," she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the pavement. "Your world and mine, they don't mix easily." "They can," David said, his voice firm. "It just takes work." Amara turned to him, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. "Work," she repeated. "That's one thing I know how to do." As they parted ways, David watched her disappear down the street, her silhouette framed by the fading light. He knew the road ahead would be anything but easy, but for the first time in his life, he felt ready to fight for something that truly mattered. The sun hung low in the sky as David adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror. He sat in his car, parked at the edge of his parents' sprawling estate, willing his nerves to settle. Beside him on the passenger seat lay a carefully arranged bouquet of lilies, his mother's favorite, and a box of chocolates meant for his father. The gifts felt almost comically inadequate, like shields against an oncoming storm. This wasn't just a dinner. It was the moment he had been dreading. He was bringing Amara and her children into the orbit of his family, a family steeped in tradition, whose carefully curated world left little room for deviation. As he glanced at the clock on the dashboard, a tight knot of anxiety coiled in his stomach. "I'm ready if you are." Amara's voice broke through his thoughts. She sat in the passenger seat of her own car, parked next to his, her gaze steady despite the tension he knew she felt. In the back seat, her 3 children sat quietly, their usual chatter subdued by the weight of the evening ahead. David stepped out and crossed over to her car. "We've got this," he said, though his voice carried a hint of uncertainty. Amara studied him for a moment, before giving a slight nod. "Let's do it." The grand estate loomed ahead, as the group walked up the stone pathway, its manicured gardens and gleaming windows, exuding an air of untouchable elegance. Margaret and William Peterson, David's parents, stood at the doorway. Their postures were stiff, their smiles polite, but strained. "David," Margaret greeted, her voice crisp and controlled. Her eyes flicked briefly to Amara and her children. "You're late." "Traffic," David replied, his tone equally curt. "Mom, Dad, this is Amara, and these are her children, Jasmine, Elijah, and Sarah." Margaret's lips twitched into something resembling a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. William offered a terse nod, but said nothing. "It's a pleasure to meet you," Amara said, her voice calm and poised, despite the chilly reception. She extended a hand, but Margaret merely clasped her own hands together. "Let's go inside, shall we?" Margaret said, turning on her heel without waiting for a response. Amara's children exchanged uneasy glances, but David shot them a reassuring look. "Come on," he said softly, ushering them inside. The dining room was a study in opulence, with crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the long mahogany table. The meal began with stiff pleasantries, Margaret asking Amara about her work with the most superficial of interest. Amara answered politely, her voice steady, but the tension in the room was palpable. "Raising 3 children on your own must be challenging," Margaret said, her tone laced with condescension. "I can't imagine how you find the time for, well, anything else." Amara smiled faintly. "It is challenging, but I've always believed that challenges build character. My children are my priority, and I wouldn't trade that for anything." Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing further. William, who had been mostly silent throughout the meal, finally spoke. "David," he began, his voice low and deliberate, "have you thought about the implications of this relationship? For your career? For the family?" David's jaw tightened. "This isn't about implications, Dad. It's about love. Amara and her children are important to me." William's gaze hardened. Love doesn't exist in a vacuum. There are expectations, responsibilities. You can't just ignore the reality of how this looks. Amara stiffened, but remained composed. "With respect, sir, love isn't about appearances. It's about commitment and understanding." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Jasmine shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her small hands gripping the edge of the table. After dinner, Margaret pulled David aside into the study. Her expression, a mix of frustration and concern. William joined them, his arms crossed as he leaned against the bookshelf. "David," Margaret began, her voice low but sharp, I don't understand what you're thinking. This relationship, it's reckless. Do you realize what people will say? What they're already saying? David met her gaze, his own steely. I don't care what people say. But you should, Margaret snapped. You've worked so hard to build your reputation. Are you really willing to throw it away for this? William interjected, his tone measured but no less cutting. This isn't just about you, son. Our family has a name, a legacy. Your decisions affect all of us. David took a step closer, his voice rising. You're right, Dad. This isn't just about me. It's about the kind of life I want to build. Amara and her kids are part of that life, whether you accept it or not. Margaret's face hardened. You're making a mistake. Maybe I am, David shot back, his voice trembling with emotion. But it's my mistake to make. Outside, Amara stood by the car with her children, her arms crossed against the chilly night air. She looked up as David approached, his face a mixture of anger and resolve. They don't approve, she said simply. It wasn't a question. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. No, they don't. But that doesn't change how I feel. I'm not giving up on us. Amara studied him, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. David, I need you to be sure. This isn't just about me. It's about Jasmine, Elijah, and Sarah. They've already faced enough rejection in their lives. I won't put them through more uncertainty. David stepped closer, taking her hands in his. I am sure. I've never been more sure of anything. I'll fight for this. For us. Amara's expression softened, but her voice remained firm. Then, we fight together. As they drove away from the estate, the car was silent, save for the soft hum of the engine. Amara's children had fallen asleep in the back seat, their faces peaceful, despite the evening's tension. David glanced at Amara, her profile illuminated by the glow of passing streetlights. She looked strong, unyielding, a force of nature. He realized then that loving her wasn't just a choice, it was a privilege. For the first time, David felt the full weight of what they were up against. But he also felt something else. Hope. They might not have his parents' approval, but they had each other. And for now, that was enough. The morning after the disastrous dinner with David's parents, Amara stood in her modest kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. The sunlight streamed through the window, catching the edges of her tired eyes. Jasmine and Elijah sat at the small kitchen table, finishing their cereal in subdued silence, their usual chatter noticeably absent. Sarah clung to her mother's leg, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. David had left a message earlier that morning, asking to meet by the lake in the nearby park. Amara had hesitated, her thoughts tangled. The dinner had been painful, not just for her, but for her children, who had noticed the cold, judgmental looks from David's parents, despite their polite smiles. She had begun to question whether this relationship was worth the emotional toll it might take on her family. Mom, Jasmine said softly, pulling Amara from her thoughts. Are we going to see Mr. David today? Amara looked down at her daughter, who met her gaze with tentative hope. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. We're going to talk. The lake shimmered under the afternoon sun as Amara approached the park. David stood near the water's edge, his shoulders tense as he stared out at the gentle ripples. When he turned and saw her, his face broke into a tentative smile, but his eyes betrayed his unease. Thank you for coming, David said, as she joined him. He gestured to a bench under the shade of an oak tree. I thought we could talk. Amara nodded, sitting down but keeping a slight distance between them. Last night was difficult, she began, her tone carefully measured. David let out a heavy sigh, running a hand through his hair. I know, and I'm so sorry. My parents, they're stuck in their ways. But that doesn't mean I agree with them. I don't care about their prejudices, Amara. I care about you. Amara looked at him, her expression unreadable. It's not just about your parents, David. It's about everything. The stares, the whispers, the judgment. My children see it too. I've worked so hard to protect them from that kind of pain. David reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. I don't want to be another source of pain for you or the kids. I want to be the opposite. I want to be someone you can lean on, someone they can trust. Amara studied his face, searching for doubt, but finding only sincerity. Trust is earned, David, she said quietly. And it's not just my trust you'll need. It's theirs too. I know, David replied, and I'm willing to work for it. David's commitment to earning the children's trust began the following weekend when he joined Amara and her kids at a nearby community center. Jasmine had been hesitant at first, her usual confidence shaken by the events of the past week. But when David suggested they try the rock climbing wall together, her curiosity outweighed her apprehension. You've got this, Jasmine, David said, as she ascended the brightly colored wall, her small hands gripping the holds with determination. One step at a time. Jasmine glanced down at him, her face breaking into a cautious smile. You really think I can do it? I know you can, David replied, his voice steady with encouragement. By the time Jasmine reached the top, her smile had grown wider, her earlier doubts momentarily forgotten. David's applause was genuine, and for the first time, she began to see him as more than just her mother's friend. Elijah and Sarah warmed to David more slowly, their natural shyness making them cautious. But David's patience won them over. He spent hours helping Elijah build a model rocket and joined Sarah in a game of hide-and-seek, his laughter echoing through the house as she darted between the furniture. Amara watched these moments quietly, her heart softening as she saw her children begin to open up to David. It wasn't easy for them to trust, but David's genuine effort was impossible to ignore. While David worked to build trust within Amara's family, the outside world remained less forgiving. The small suburban community where Amara lived was tight-knit, its residents wary of outsiders and quick to judge anything that deviated from their norm. Whispers followed Amara and David wherever they went. At the grocery store, an older woman pointedly turned her cart away from them. At the local diner, a waiter's smile faltered when David introduced Amara and her children as his family. One evening, as they left the diner, David's friend Eric called out to him from a nearby table. Hey, Dave, long time no see. David smiled, approaching Eric with Amara at his side. Eric, this is Amara and her kids. Eric's smile wavered for a moment before he recovered. Nice to meet you, he said, his tone polite but lacking warmth. As David and Amara walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that Eric's gaze lingered a little too long, his expression tinged with judgment. Later, when David confronted Eric about his reaction, Eric shrugged uncomfortably. Look, Dave, I'm just saying, you're making things harder for yourself. People are talking. Are you sure this is the path you want to take? David's jaw tightened. Yes, Eric, I'm sure. As the weeks went on, David's resolve only grew stronger. He knew he wanted to spend his life with Amara and her children, but he also knew that actions spoke louder than words. He began planning a proposal that would show Amara just how committed he was, not just to her, but to embracing her world. One evening, under the guise of a family picnic, David led Amara and her children to a quiet meadow outside the city. The setting sun bathed the field in golden light, as David unpacked a basket filled with Amara's favorite foods and small gifts for the children. As they sat together, laughing and sharing stories, David stood and reached for Amara's hand. "I have something I want to say," he began, his voice steady, despite the rapid pounding of his heart. Amara looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. The children watched quietly, sensing that something important was about to happen. "Amara," David continued, dropping to one knee, "from the moment I met you, you've shown me what strength, love, and resilience look like. You and your children have become my family, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I deserve to be part of yours. Will you marry me?" Amara's breath caught in her throat as David opened a small box, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. Her children's faces lit up with excitement, their earlier hesitations replaced by hope. "Yes," Amara whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will." The children cheered as David slipped the ring onto Amara's finger, his own eyes shining with unshed tears. In that moment, the weight of their struggles seemed to lift, replaced by the promise of a future built on love, trust, and unity. The engagement announcement, shared discreetly within David and Amara's immediate circles, rippled outward with unintended consequences. What should have been a moment of celebration became the catalyst for whispers, side glances, and an undercurrent of disapproval. David and Amara, while hopeful, quickly realized the harsh reality of societal bias when two worlds collide in ways that challenge long-held prejudices. One Sunday morning, the family attended a neighborhood event hosted by the local community association. It was intended to be a casual gathering. Barbecue grills filling the air with savory aromas, children chasing each other across the grass, and neighbors chatting under tents. But as David and Amara arrived with the children, the lively hum of conversation seemed to dim. Subtle, almost imperceptible, heads turned, and murmurs spread like an unspoken contagion. "David, over here," called a familiar voice. It was Michael, one of David's longtime acquaintances. Amara smiled politely as they approached, her children clinging a little closer to her side. "Nice to see you, Michael," David said, offering his hand. Michael shook it, though his eyes briefly flicked to Amara and the children, with an expression that was hard to read. "You too," he said, his voice strained. "And, this must be your fiancée." "Yes," David said firmly, his tone leaving no room for ambiguity. "This is Amara." Amara extended her hand, her smile unwavering despite the hesitation she saw in Michael's face. "It's nice to meet you," she said, her voice as warm as the late spring breeze. Michael shook her hand briefly, before excusing himself, muttering something about needing to check on the food. David's jaw tightened, but Amara touched his arm gently, a silent reminder to let it go for now. The prejudice wasn't confined to adults. It seeped into spaces where children should have been shielded from such things. Jasmine, Amara's eldest, came home from school one afternoon, with red-rimmed eyes, clutching her backpack tightly to her chest. Amara noticed immediately. "Jasmine, what happened?" she asked, kneeling in front of her daughter. Jasmine hesitated, her lips quivering before she finally whispered, "They wouldn't let me sit with them at lunch. They said, I didn't belong." Amara's heart broke as she pulled Jasmine into her arms. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, stroking her daughter's hair. "You are worth more than their words. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." David walked in as Amara comforted Jasmine. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Amara looked up, her eyes heavy with unshed tears. "She's learning what the world can be like," she said softly. David crouched down beside them. Jasmine, he said gently, what those kids said doesn't define who you are. You're smart, kind, and brave. Don't ever let anyone take that from you. For the first time that evening, Jasmine managed a small, teary smile. As David grew closer to Amara and her children, he began to witness firsthand the systemic and casual discrimination they faced daily. One afternoon, he and Amara went to a nearby cafe. The waiter greeted them with a forced smile, his gaze lingering on Amara longer than necessary before he led them to a table in the corner, far from the bustling center of the room. David bristled. Why are we being seated all the way back here? He asked the waiter, his tone sharper than usual. The waiter stammered, his demeanor shifting uncomfortably. It's, just policy, he said, avoiding David's eyes. David didn't press further, but his anger simmered throughout the meal. As they left, he turned to Amara. Does this happen often? He asked, his voice tight. Amara sighed. More often than I'd like to admit. But I've learned to pick my battles. David's fists clenched. You shouldn't have to. Amara placed a hand on his arm. I know. But what matters is how we respond. With grace and resilience. Determined to shield their family from negativity, David and Amara decided to host a small dinner at their home for a handful of supportive friends. It was an opportunity to focus on the positive, to surround themselves with people who believed in their love. Amara prepared a spread of dishes, blending flavors from her African heritage with more traditional American comfort food. Jasmine helped set the table, her mood lifting as she saw the effort her mother and David were putting into the evening. As their guests arrived, the atmosphere quickly filled with warmth and laughter. One of David's friends, Rachel, raised a toast midway through the meal. To David and Amara, she said, her smile genuine. May your love continue to inspire all of us. Amara glanced at David, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. In that moment, surrounded by acceptance and kindness, they felt a renewed sense of hope. The weeks following the dinner were a mix of highs and lows. David's parents continued to voice their disapproval, while Amara's community occasionally questioned whether David truly understood the challenges she and her children faced. The strain of navigating these complexities began to take its toll, but it also brought David and Amara closer together. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the park, David stopped abruptly. I've been thinking, he said, his tone serious. Amara turned to him, her brow furrowing slightly. About what? About how much I still have to learn, he admitted. I want to do more than just stand beside you. I want to stand up for you, for our family. Amara's expression softened. David, just being here, being present, means more than you know. David shook his head. It's not enough. I see what you and the kids go through, and it's not right. I want to be part of the change, not just an observer. Amara smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Then we'll do it together, she said, intertwining her fingers with his. One step at a time. The wedding day arrived with a mixture of excitement and tension. David and Amara had spent weeks meticulously planning an event that symbolized their unity, a union of not only two people, but two cultures. Amara insisted on incorporating elements from her African heritage, while David wanted to honor his own family's traditions, hoping to find common ground, despite the undercurrent of disapproval from his parents. The ceremony was set in a sprawling outdoor garden, surrounded by blooming flowers and trees that swayed gently in the spring breeze. Rows of chairs were adorned with fabric in vibrant patterns chosen by Amara, representing her cultural roots, alongside subtle floral arrangements selected by David's mother, her only concession to participating in the wedding planning. As guests began arriving, It was clear that the event was more than just a celebration. It was a statement. Among the attendees were David's friends, some of whom still carried unspoken doubts, and members of Amara's community, who remained protective of her. Their mingling was polite but cautious, underscoring the social barriers the couple was determined to overcome. The ceremony began, with a procession that left everyone captivated. Amara walked down the aisle, her dress a stunning blend of modern elegance and traditional African design, embroidered with intricate patterns that symbolized resilience and unity. It was a testament to her journey and the strength of her identity. David stood at the altar, his heart pounding, as he watched her approach. His tailored suit was complemented by a subtle yet meaningful touch, a pocket square made from the same vibrant fabric as Amara's dress. It was his quiet way of showing that he embraced her world as much as she did his. Amara's children led the procession, their smiles lighting up the aisle as they carried small baskets of flowers. The sight of them, walking confidently in their roles, brought tears to many eyes, especially David's. To him, this moment represented more than just a wedding. It was the official beginning of the family they were building together. The vows were the emotional centerpiece of the ceremony. David spoke first, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "Amara," he began, "you've taught me more about love, courage, and strength than I ever thought possible. You've shown me that family isn't just about where we come from. It's about what we build together. I promise to stand by you, to cherish you, and to protect our family, no matter what challenges we face." Amara's eyes glistened with tears as she responded, her voice soft but unwavering. "David, you've been my partner, my ally, and my safe haven. Together, we've faced fears and doubts, but we've also found joy and hope. I promise to walk beside you, to love you fiercely, and to teach our children that love can overcome anything." The officiant, a close friend of Amara's, smiled as he pronounced them husband and wife. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you partners in life, in love, and in resilience. You may now seal your vows with a kiss." As David and Amara kissed, the audience erupted into applause, their cheers filling the air with a newfound sense of unity. While many of David's family members had declined to attend, citing various excuses, a few surprised him by showing up. His younger sister, Emily, approached them after the ceremony, her expression tentative but genuine. "I wanted to see this for myself," she admitted, her voice quiet. "And I'm glad I did. You two, you're incredible together." David embraced her, his gratitude overwhelming. "Thank you, Emily. It means the world to us that you're here." Margaret and William, however, remained notably absent. Their refusal to attend was a painful reminder of the challenges still ahead, but David refused to let their absence overshadow the joy of the day. The reception was a lively celebration, blending traditions from both sides. Guests were treated to a menu that featured dishes from Amara's African heritage, alongside classic American fare, symbolizing the merging of their worlds. The music, too, reflected their union, transitioning seamlessly between soulful African rhythms and contemporary Western hits. Amara's community embraced the festivities wholeheartedly, teaching guests traditional dances that quickly became the highlight of the evening. David, initially hesitant, joined in with enthusiasm, his laughter echoing as he attempted to mimic the intricate footwork. Amara watched him with a mixture of amusement and admiration, her heart swelling with pride. One particularly poignant moment came when Amara's eldest daughter, Jasmine, took the microphone to give a toast. Standing tall and confident, she spoke from the heart. "Today I see my mom happier than I've ever seen her," Jasmine said, her voice steady. David, thank you for loving her and for loving us. You've shown us what it means to stand up for what matters, and we're proud to call you family." Her words left the room silent for a moment before the applause erupted. David's chest tightened with emotion, and he pulled Jasmine into a hug as the crowd cheered. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew even more intimate. Guests gathered around a bonfire, sharing stories and laughter under the starry sky. Amara's children dozed off in a corner, their smiles still lingering as they clutched small keepsakes from the day. David and Amara sat hand in hand, watching the flames flicker. "We did it," David murmured, his voice filled with awe. Amara leaned her head against his shoulder. "We did," she echoed. "And this is just the beginning." The day after the wedding, David received an unexpected phone call. It was his mother, Margaret. "I still don't agree with your decision," she began. Her tone clipped. "But I'm willing to meet Amara. If you think she's worth it, maybe I owe it to you to see why." David's heart raced. It wasn't the acceptance he had hoped for, but it was a start. "Thank you, Mom," he said, his voice trembling with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "That means more than you know." The honeymoon glow didn't last long. Within weeks of the wedding, David and Amara found themselves grappling with the realities of blending their lives. The cost of raising 3 children, Jasmine, Malik, and Grace, was already significant, and now, as a new family unit, their expenses began to mount. David had always been financially stable, but the addition of school fees, extracurricular activities, and the unexpected costs of running a larger household stretched his budget thin. Late at night, he sat at the kitchen table with a stack of bills, a furrowed brow betraying the weight on his shoulders. Amara noticed his growing fatigue and quietly began looking for ways to contribute. While she had always worked hard to support her children, she was determined not to let David shoulder the burden alone. She picked up freelance work, sewing custom outfits and tutoring local children, using her resourcefulness to make ends meet. Despite their efforts, the strain was palpable. The couple avoided talking about money during dinner, not wanting to alarm the children, but their whispered conversations after bedtime often turned into heated debates about how to manage their finances. "I can take on more hours," David insisted one night, pacing the living room. "You're already working late as it is," Amara countered, her voice firm. "We'll figure this out together." Their shared determination to protect the family from feeling the weight of their struggles became their silent pact. But the toll was evident. Their financial worries were only one part of the challenge. Shortly after moving into David's suburban neighborhood, Amara began noticing subtle but unmistakable signs of unease among their neighbors. Polite but clipped greetings, lingering stares, and whispered conversations as she walked by made her feel unwelcome. One morning, as she took Malik and Grace to the local park, a group of mothers sitting on a nearby bench fell silent as she approached. Their eyes flicked to her and then away, their expressions unreadable but cold. Amara tried to shake off the discomfort, focusing on her children's laughter as they played on the swings. But then came the incident at the park that shook the family to its core. Jasmine, who had always been a bright and outgoing child, came home in tears one afternoon. She had been excluded from a group activity at school, and the sting of rejection was clear on her face. "They said I didn't belong there," Jasmine whispered, her voice trembling. "That our family doesn't belong here." Amara hugged her tightly, her own heart breaking. That evening, as she recounted the story to David, he clenched his fists in frustration. "This isn't right," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Our children shouldn't have to deal with this." determined to protect their children from further harm. David and Amara began working together to instill resilience and self-worth in them. Every evening, they gathered as a family to share their highs and lows from the day, creating a safe space for open conversation. "We're different, and that's what makes us special," Amara told the children during one of these family talks. "You are strong, kind, and brilliant, and no one can take that away from you." David joined in, sharing his own struggles at work. "It's not always easy, but standing up for what's right is worth it," he said. "We're in this together." Their words seemed to resonate, especially with Jasmine, who gradually began to regain her confidence. Amara noticed her daughter standing a little taller and smiling a little more, though the journey was far from over. David's understanding of the depth of the prejudice Amara and the children faced grew sharper with each passing day. At work, he overheard colleagues making offhand comments about interracial relationships, their words laced with ignorance and disdain. One afternoon during a company lunch, a senior manager remarked, "Must be tough, raising someone else's kids, especially with added challenges." David felt his face flush with anger. "Those kids are my family," he replied, his voice steady but firm. "And there's nothing tough about loving them." The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. David's colleagues quickly changed the subject, but he knew the battle for understanding and respect would be ongoing. Amidst the challenges, there were moments of light that reminded David and Amara why they had chosen this path together. One such moment came when Jasmine won an award for her essay on overcoming adversity. In her piece, she wrote about the strength she found in her family, describing David as a role model who taught her the importance of perseverance. "I couldn't have done it without you," she told him after the award ceremony, her eyes shining with pride. David hugged her tightly, his heart swelling with emotion. "You did this, Jasmine, and I couldn't be prouder." Despite the resistance they faced, David and Amara also found unexpected allies. A couple from the neighborhood, Rachel and Marcus, reached out after witnessing the cold treatment the family had endured. They invited David and Amara over for dinner, offering words of encouragement and a genuine desire to help. "We've been through something similar," Rachel admitted, sharing her own experiences of being in a mixed-race marriage. "It's hard, but it gets better." Their friendship became a lifeline, offering David and Amara a glimpse of the acceptance they longed for. The small circle of support they began to build became a source of strength, reminding them that they weren't entirely alone in their fight for acceptance. One evening, after a particularly challenging day, David and Amara sat together on the porch, watching the children play in the yard. The weight of their struggles felt a little lighter in that moment, their love a quiet but unyielding force. "We've come so far already," David said, taking Amara's hand in his. "And we'll keep going." Amara nodded, her eyes reflecting the same determination. "Together, we can handle anything." As they sat there, the sounds of laughter and the warm glow of the setting sun filled the air, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, their family was a source of hope and strength. The decision to leave the neighborhood came after one too many sleepless nights filled with tension. Between the subtle prejudices of their neighbors and the emotional toll on their children, David and Amara realized they needed to take drastic action for their family's well-being. It wasn't an easy choice. This house had been David's home for years, a place filled with memories of stability and familiarity. But now, it felt like a battleground where acceptance was a fleeting dream. Amara proposed the idea during one of their quiet evenings. "David," she began, her voice steady yet heavy with emotion, "we need a place where the kids can grow, without constantly feeling like they don't belong. They need to see the world isn't always this cold. David sighed, his eyes scanning the dimly lit living room, where Jasmine, Malik, and Grace were quietly playing. "You're right," he admitted after a moment. "It's not just about us anymore. It's about them. Let's find a place where we can truly start fresh." The search for a new home was filled with its own set of challenges. They wanted a neighborhood that was not only diverse, but also welcoming, a place where their children could thrive and make friends without fear of exclusion. After weeks of researching and visiting potential locations, they settled on a vibrant, multicultural area in a city known for its progressive community. The streets were alive with a mix of cultures, with colorful murals on walls and cafes offering cuisines from around the world. It felt like a place where differences were celebrated, not judged. The first day they visited their potential new home, the kids ran through the open backyard, their laughter echoing in the crisp air. Amara watched them with a small smile, her heart swelling with hope. David took her hand and whispered, "I think we've found it." Moving day was a whirlwind of activity, with boxes piled high and movers shuffling back and forth. Despite the chaos, there was an underlying excitement. The children helped as much as they could, Jasmine carefully packing her books, while Malik and Grace eagerly carried lighter items to the truck. As they left their old neighborhood, Amara glanced back one last time, her heart a mix of relief and lingering sadness. "Goodbye," she whispered, as if bidding farewell to the weight they'd carried there. When they arrived at their new home, neighbors waved warmly as they passed by, some even stopping to introduce themselves. One woman, holding a tray of cookies, greeted them with a genuine smile. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said. "Let us know if you need anything." For the first time in a long while, Amara felt a spark of hope that this could truly be the fresh start they needed. The first few weeks in their new home were both exhilarating and challenging. The children were nervous about starting at a new school, but Amara and David encouraged them with heartfelt talks and promises of better days ahead. Jasmine, in particular, struggled with the change, worried she might face the same cold stares and whispers. "You'll be okay, sweetheart," Amara assured her one evening, brushing a strand of hair from Jasmine's face. "This is a new chapter, and you're stronger than you think." David spent long nights unpacking and setting up the house to make it feel like home. He hung family photos on the walls and set up a small reading nook for Jasmine, who loved losing herself in books. Malik and Grace were thrilled to find a nearby park, where they quickly made friends with other kids who welcomed them without hesitation. The warmth of their new community was like a balm for the family's weary hearts. Invitations to block parties and casual chats with neighbors during morning walks began to build a sense of belonging that they had never felt before. One of the first significant milestones came when Jasmine participated in her new school's poetry recital. She had been hesitant at first, fearing rejection, but her teacher encouraged her to share her thoughts. Amara and David sat in the audience, their hearts swelling with pride, as Jasmine stood on stage, her voice steady and clear. Her poem, titled "Home in Our Hearts," spoke of finding strength and love within a family, no matter where they were. When she finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Amara wiped away tears as she hugged Jasmine afterward, whispering, "You were incredible." The children weren't the only ones experiencing growth. Amara began attending local community meetings, where she met people from diverse backgrounds who shared her passion for inclusivity. She started volunteering at a local cultural center, organizing events to celebrate different traditions and bring neighbors together. David, too, found solace in their new environment. At work, he noticed a shift in his colleagues' attitudes. While there were still occasional ignorant comments, he had gained confidence in addressing them head-on. He even began mentoring a younger coworker who had faced similar struggles. As their lives settled into a new rhythm, David and Amara made it a priority to nurture their relationship. They scheduled weekly date nights, sometimes trying out new restaurants in the city, or simply sitting on their porch, talking late into the night. One evening, as they watched the sunset, David turned to Amara and said, "You were right. Moving here, it's the best decision we've ever made." Amara smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It's not just the place, David. It's us. We made this home, together." Their love deepened as they faced each new challenge with unity, their bond growing stronger with each small victory. The family's efforts to integrate into their new community didn't go unnoticed. Neighbors began to see them as a source of positivity, drawn to their warmth and resilience. Amara's involvement in the cultural center blossomed into a leadership role, and she organized a neighborhood potluck that became a highlight of the year. David spearheaded a local initiative to create safer spaces for children to play, working closely with city officials to improve the parks in their area. The project not only brought neighbors together, but also gave David a renewed sense of purpose. The family's growing influence in their community marked a stark contrast to the isolation they had felt before. They had turned their fresh start into an opportunity to not just survive, but thrive. As the months passed, David and Amara reflected on how far they had come. Sitting around the dinner table one evening, they listened as Jasmine excitedly talked about her new friends. Malik shared his latest soccer triumph, and Grace showed off a drawing she had made at school. David reached for Amara's hand under the table, giving it a gentle squeeze. "We did it," he whispered. Amara nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. This is just the beginning. The family's fresh start had not only given them a new home, but also a renewed sense of hope and purpose. They were ready to face whatever came next. Together, Amara stood in the middle of the small storefront, surrounded by blank walls and dusty floors. The space was nothing more than an empty shell, but in her mind, it was brimming with possibilities. She could already envision the vibrant shelves, filled with handcrafted treasures, the sound of soft African rhythms playing in the background, and the sense of pride it would bring not just to her, but to her entire family. "I want this place to feel like home," Amara said, turning to David, who was standing nearby with a tape measure in hand. David smiled at her determination. "It will be," he assured her. "It'll be more than that. It'll be a legacy." The shop, which Amara decided to name Roots, symbolized everything she cherished: her heritage, her family, and her journey. It wasn't just about selling handmade crafts. It was about celebrating African culture and sharing its beauty with the community. She wanted Roots to be a space where people of all backgrounds could connect us, learn, and appreciate the richness of diversity. Transforming the empty shop into a welcoming space was a labor of love. David took charge of the renovations, spending long hours painting walls, assembling shelves, and fixing fixtures. The children pitched in too, painting murals of vibrant African landscapes and symbols that told stories of Amara's heritage. Jasmine, who had grown increasingly proud of her roots, took it upon herself to research the meanings behind the designs. "This pattern," she explained one evening, pointing to a geometric motif, "represents community and unity. It's perfect for the shop." Amara beamed with pride, feeling the joy of seeing her children embrace the culture she had worked so hard to preserve. Meanwhile, Amara reached out to artisans from her hometown and surrounding communities. Through calls and emails, she connected with women who wove intricate baskets, men who carved wooden figurines, and children who painted vibrant scenes of life back home. Each piece she ordered came with a story, one that Amara promised to share with her customers. The morning of the grand opening arrived, and Amara was filled with nervous excitement. She had spent weeks preparing, from curating the perfect collection of handmade goods to arranging the store with care and intention. Shelves were adorned with colorful textiles, intricately beaded jewelry, and sculptures that seemed to hold the soul of their creators. Neighbors and friends began to arrive, drawn by the inviting aroma of fresh-baked goods and the rhythmic sounds of a live drum performance. Amara greeted each guest with warmth, offering them a cup of hibiscus tea as she guided them through the shop. "Every item here has a story," she said, holding up a delicately carved figurine. "This was made by a father of 4 in Nigeria. He told me he carves to honor his ancestors." The guests listened intently, touched by the depth of meaning behind each piece. They weren't just buying items. They were connecting with a rich history and culture. Roots quickly became more than just a shop. It became a hub for cultural exchange. Amara hosted weekly workshops, inviting local families to learn traditional crafts like basket weaving and jewelry making. She also organized storytelling nights, where elders from various backgrounds shared folk tales and wisdom from their homelands. One evening, a woman approached Amara after a storytelling session. "I never realized how much our cultures have in common," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Your stories remind me of the ones my grandmother used to tell me back in Mexico." Amara smiled, feeling the connection she had always hoped Roots would inspire. "That's the beauty of sharing," she replied. "We realize how deeply connected we all are." Roots also became a source of pride and learning for Amara's children. Jasmine often helped her mother share the stories behind the crafts, her confidence growing with each interaction. Malik and Grace loved to greet customers, their innocent smiles warming the hearts of everyone who walked through the door. One day, as Jasmine was explaining the meaning of a patterned fabric to a customer, Amara watched with quiet pride. Her daughter's voice was strong and steady, her passion for their culture evident in every word. It was a moment that reaffirmed everything Amara had worked for. "You're incredible," Amara told Jasmine later that evening. "You taught me to be," Jasmine replied, hugging her mother tightly. Running Roots wasn't without its challenges. There were days when sales were slow, and Amara worried about making ends meet. On one such evening, David found her sitting at the dining table, her head resting on her hands. "Amara," he said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This shop isn't just about numbers. It's about what it represents. Look at the impact you've already made." Amara nodded, finding strength in his words. "You're right," she said. "It's about planting seeds, even if we don't see them bloom right away." Slowly but surely, Roots began to thrive. Word spread about the shop, and customers started coming from neighboring towns to experience the unique cultural oasis Amara had created. One afternoon, a reporter from a local newspaper visited Roots. She was captivated by the shop's mission and wrote a heartfelt feature about Amara's journey, highlighting her resilience and the importance of preserving cultural heritage. The article brought a surge of attention to Roots, and Amara was soon receiving calls from schools, community centers, and even small businesses, asking her to share her story. She began giving talks about the significance of cultural preservation, inspiring others to take pride in their own histories. As Roots became a pillar of the community, Amara decided to host an annual festival celebrating African culture. She called it the Roots Heritage Festival, inviting artisans, musicians, and storytellers to share their talents. The festival became a vibrant celebration of diversity, drawing hundreds of attendees. David stood by Amara's side during the festival's opening, watching her address the crowd with poise and passion. "You've built something extraordinary," he told her, his voice filled with admiration. "We've built it," Amara corrected, squeezing his hand. As the festival ended and the sun dipped below the horizon, Amara stood outside Roots, looking up at the sign that bore its name. It wasn't just a shop, it was a legacy, one she was proud to pass on to her children. David joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "What's next?" he asked. Amara smiled, her heart full. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." Amara and David sat together in their living room, poring over plans for their next big project. The family's move to the diverse city had brought them a sense of belonging, but Amara couldn't shake the feeling that there was more they could do. Not just for their family, but for others navigating similar struggles. "What if we create something that brings families like ours together?" Amara proposed, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "A place where children can feel safe, supported, and proud of who they are." David nodded thoughtfully. "A youth center," he said. "Not just for activities, but for connection. A place where kids can learn about each other's cultures and grow stronger because of their differences." Their shared vision sparked weeks of planning. They reached out to community leaders, gathered feedback from local families, and began sketching out what would eventually become the Harmony Youth Center. Transforming their vision into reality was no small feat. David took charge of securing funding, leveraging his network to reach philanthropists and local businesses. Amara, meanwhile, focused on creating programs that would appeal to children and parents alike. "Art and music are universal," she explained during one planning meeting. "We'll offer classes that teach traditional crafts, but we'll also include modern activities to help bridge generational gaps." The couple also collaborated with educators to develop life skills workshops, including conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, and leadership training. Their goal was to give children the tools they needed to thrive, not just academically, but socially and emotionally. Jasmine eagerly joined the efforts, suggesting ways to make the center more welcoming for teens. "We should have a space where kids can just hang out," she said. "Somewhere they don't feel judged." Her ideas were incorporated into the design, which included a cozy lounge area filled with bean bags, colorful murals, and shelves stocked with books and games. The Harmony Youth Center officially opened its doors on a sunny Saturday morning. Families from across the city gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, curious and excited about what the new space would offer. David, holding the large scissors, turned to Amara. "Ready?" he asked with a smile. She took a deep breath, looking out at the crowd of children and parents. More than ready. As the ribbon fell, cheers erupted from the crowd. Children rushed inside, their faces lighting up as they explored the vibrant rooms. Parents mingled, many exchanging stories of their own journeys as multicultural families. Jasmine stood near the entrance, handing out brochures and answering questions with a confidence that made Amara's heart swell with pride. "It's all about connection," she told one parent. "We want every kid to feel like they belong here." Jasmine quickly became a standout leader at the center. She organized weekly group discussions where teens could share their experiences and support one another. Her ability to empathize with others, combined with her growing sense of identity, made her a trusted figure among her peers. During one session, a boy named Carlos hesitantly spoke about being teased at school for his accent. Jasmine listened intently before sharing her own story of feeling isolated because of her family's differences. "Being different isn't easy," she told him, "but it's also what makes you unique. You have a story that no one else can tell." Carlos smiled for the first time that day. his shoulders relaxing as he realized he wasn't alone. Jasmine's efforts didn't go unnoticed. Amara and David often watched from a distance, marveling at how their daughter had grown into a confident young woman who inspired others. As the months passed, the Harmony Youth Center became a cornerstone of the community. Its programs brought together children from diverse backgrounds, fostering friendships that transcended cultural boundaries. Parents, too, found solace in the center, attending workshops and sharing advice on navigating the challenges of raising multicultural families. One evening, during a family storytelling event, a woman named Lila stood up to speak. "I used to feel so isolated," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But this place has given me hope. It's shown me that we're not alone, that there are people who understand and care." Her words brought tears to Amara's eyes. This was exactly why she and David had created the center, to provide a sanctuary where people could find strength in community. The journey wasn't without its obstacles. Early on, the center faced criticism from a few local residents who questioned its focus on multiculturalism. Some even accused it of creating division by emphasizing cultural differences. David addressed the backlash head-on, hosting an open forum where community members could voice their concerns. "This center isn't about separating people," he explained. "It's about bringing them together, about celebrating what makes us unique while finding common ground." The forum ended with several attendees changing their perspectives, and the center's reputation as a unifying force only grew stronger. Buoyed by the success of the Harmony Youth Center, Amara and David began exploring ways to expand its impact. They launched a scholarship program to support children from underprivileged backgrounds, ensuring that financial barriers wouldn't prevent anyone from participating. Amara also initiated partnerships with local schools, offering cultural exchange programs that allowed students to learn about different traditions and histories. These initiatives further solidified the center's role as a hub for education and understanding. The Harmony Youth Center's influence rippled through the community, transforming it in profound ways. Children who once felt isolated began to thrive, their newfound confidence spilling over into their schoolwork and friendships. Parents, too, found a sense of belonging, forming bonds that extended beyond the walls of the center. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Jasmine shared a story about a new friend she'd met at the center, a girl named Aisha, who had recently moved to the city. "She told me she's never felt this welcomed anywhere before," Jasmine said, her voice filled with emotion. "It made me realize just how special this place really is." Amara smiled, reaching for David's hand. "That's the power of community," she said softly. "When we lift each other up, we all rise together." As the Harmony Youth Center celebrated its first anniversary, David and Amara reflected on how far they had come. What had started as a simple idea had blossomed into a movement, a testament to the resilience and strength of families like theirs. "We've built something lasting," David said during a quiet moment with Amara. "Something that will keep growing, long after we're gone." Amara nodded, her heart full. "And it's all because we believed in the power of love and unity." Life at the Harmony Youth Center had given David and Amara's family a renewed sense of purpose and belonging. But one evening, as they sat around the dinner table, David's phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from Aunt Carol, the relative who had once been among the most vocal critics of his relationship with Amara. "We're hosting a family gathering next month," the message read. "It's been too long since you've come around. Bring the kids." David stared at the screen, a mix of emotions swirling inside him. The last time he'd been to one of these gatherings, the atmosphere had been cold and judgmental. His family's harsh words about Amara and their children still echoed in his mind. He turned to Amara, her face soft with curiosity. "What is it?" she asked, noticing his hesitation. David handed her the phone. "An invitation to a family gathering." Amara read the message silently, then looked up. "Do you want to go?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me wants to believe they've changed. But what if they haven't? What if it's just more of the same?" Amara placed a reassuring hand on his. "We've faced worse, David. If you think this is worth doing, I'll stand by you." Their children, curious about the conversation, chimed in. Jasmine, now a confident young woman, said, "We're stronger now. If they can't see that, it's their loss." Her words gave David the push he needed. "All right," he said. "We'll go. But this time, we're going as a family." The days leading up to the gathering were filled with a mix of anticipation and unease. Amara focused on ensuring their children felt prepared for any awkward or uncomfortable moments. "This is about showing them who we are," she told Jasmine and her siblings during a family discussion. "Not to prove anything, but to remind them that love and strength define us, not their approval." David, meanwhile, grappled with how to approach his parents, Margaret and William. Although they hadn't explicitly apologized for their past behavior, their occasional messages had grown warmer over time. Still, he couldn't shake the memory of their initial disapproval. On the morning of the gathering, Amara chose a simple but elegant dress, a nod to her African heritage, while David opted for a tailored suit. Their children, excited but nervous, dressed in their best outfits, ready to meet a side of the family they'd only heard about in fragments. "Whatever happens," David said, as they prepared to leave, "why face it together?" The gathering was held at the sprawling family estate, a place steeped in tradition and memories of David's childhood. As they pulled into the driveway, the familiar sight of the grand house brought a flood of nostalgia and anxiety. The air was thick with tension as David, Amara, and the children stepped out of the car. Family members milling about the front yard turned to look at them, their expressions ranging from curiosity to thinly veiled skepticism. Aunt Carol was the first to approach, her face breaking into a tentative smile. "David, it's been so long," she said, pulling him into an awkward hug. Her gaze shifted to Amara and the children. "And this must be your family?" "Yes," David said firmly. "Amara, Jasmine, Aiden, and Lila." Amara extended her hand, her smile warm but cautious. "It's nice to meet you," she said. Carol hesitated for a fraction of a second before shaking Amara's hand. "Welcome," she said, her tone softening. Inside, the atmosphere was a mix of polite conversation and unspoken tension. Margaret and William were seated in the living room, their expressions unreadable as David led his family over. "Mom, Dad," David began, his voice steady. "I'd like you to meet Amara and the kids." Margaret's eyes lingered on Amara for a moment before she forced a tight smile. "Welcome," she said. Her tone clipped. William gave a curt nod, saying nothing. Amara met their gazes calmly, her poise unshaken. "Thank you for having us." As the afternoon wore on, the initial awkwardness began to thaw, thanks largely to the children. Jasmine charmed relatives with her articulate conversations, while Aiden and Lila played outside with their younger cousins, their laughter breaking through the stiffness. David's cousins approached him with tentative questions about his life. "We've heard about the youth center," one of them said. "It sounds inspiring." David took the opportunity to share more about their work. "It's been incredible to see the community come together," he said. "We've built something that shows how diversity strengthens us." Aunt Carol, overhearing the conversation, added, "You've done a lot of good, David. More than I ever imagined." Amara, meanwhile, found herself in a quiet corner with Margaret. The older woman's guarded demeanor hadn't softened much, but Amara decided to speak her truth. "I know it's not easy for you," she said gently, "but all I ask is that you see us for who we are, a family built on love and respect." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. "It's complicated," she said after a long pause, "but I can see that you've made David happy, and that matters." As the sun dipped lower, the gathering moved outdoors for dinner. David took a deep breath, standing to address the group. "Thank you all for inviting us here today," he began. "It's no secret that our journey hasn't been easy. But what I've learned is that love doesn't just overcome challenges, it transforms them." He glanced at Amara and their children, his voice steady with conviction. "This family, our family, is stronger because of what we've faced together. And I hope today is a step toward building bridges, not walls." The crowd was silent for a moment before Aunt Carol began clapping, her applause soon joined by others. Margaret and William remained seated, their expressions contemplative. As they prepared to leave, Margaret approached Amara. Her voice was quiet but sincere. "I can't promise I'll understand everything overnight," she said, "but I'd like to try." Amara smiled, her warmth genuine. "That's all I could ask for." In the car ride home, the family reflected on the day. "That wasn't as bad as I thought it would be," Aidan said, earning a laugh from Jasmine. "It's a start," David said, squeezing Amara's hand. "And that's enough." The morning sunlight spilled through the large windows of the Harmony Youth Center as David and Amara finished a team meeting with the staff. They had spent months tirelessly expanding their programs, bringing in volunteers, and organizing events that promoted inclusivity and cultural exchange. The center had become a sanctuary for families who often felt isolated in their differences, a place where every child was celebrated for who they were. That afternoon, as they prepared for a community art showcase, David received a phone call from a local journalist. "Mr. Williams, we'd love to feature your family and the center in this Sunday's issue," the journalist said. "Your story has inspired so many people." David hesitated, humbled by the attention. "We'd be honored," he replied after a brief pause. When the article was published, it was met with overwhelming positivity. The headline read, "A Family's Love Sparks Change. The Williams Legacy of Unity and Hope," accompanied by a photograph of David, Amara, and their children standing in front of the youth center. The story recounted their journey from rejection to acceptance and the impact they had made on the community. The article quickly gained traction online, shared by thousands who resonated with its message. People from neighboring towns began visiting the center, eager to experience the sense of belonging it offered. One evening, while reviewing emails, Amara came across a message from a family in another state. "Your story has given us the courage to embrace our identity," the email read. "Thank you for showing us that love and resilience can overcome anything." Amara read the message aloud to David, her voice trembling with emotion. "We never set out to be role models," she said softly. "But if sharing our story helps even one family, it's all worth it." David nodded. "It's not just about us anymore. It's about creating a ripple effect." The family began receiving invitations to speak at local schools, community centers, and even churches. At one such event, Jasmine, now a poised and articulate teenager, took the stage alongside her parents. She shared her experience of growing up in a multicultural family, emphasizing the importance of self-worth and unity. "I used to feel like I didn't belong," Jasmine said, her voice clear and steady. "But my parents taught me that our differences are what make us beautiful. We're not defined by how others see us, but by how we see ourselves." The audience erupted in applause, and Jasmine felt a surge of pride. She realized that her family's journey had given her a unique platform to inspire others. With the growing attention on their story, David and Amara decided to expand the youth center's reach. They applied for grants and partnered with local organizations to fund new initiatives, including a mentorship program for teenagers and workshops on cultural appreciation. One of their most ambitious projects was the launch of a mobile outreach program. The center acquired a van and transformed it into a mobile classroom, bringing resources and activities to underserved neighborhoods. Amara took the lead, organizing cultural storytelling sessions and art projects that celebrated diversity. During one of these outreach events, a young boy approached Amara with a shy smile. "Miss Amara," he said, holding up a drawing of his family. "Do you think Maumali can be happy like yours someday?" Amara knelt down to his level, her heart swelling with emotion. "Your family is already beautiful," she said gently. "And yes, happiness is always possible when there's love." Despite the success of their initiatives, David and Amara continued to face resistance from certain groups. A local activist, who had long opposed the center's mission, began spreading misinformation about their programs, claiming they were eroding traditional values. One evening, while reviewing the center's social media page, David noticed a string of critical comments. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It feels like, no matter how much we do, some people will always find a reason to tear us down." Amara placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We can't let a few voices drown out the good we're doing. For every critic, there are dozens of families who believe in us." They decided to host a town hall meeting, inviting the community to learn more about the center's work. The event drew a diverse crowd, and David and Amara took the opportunity to address concerns and share their vision. By the end of the evening, many attendees who had been skeptical expressed their support. "I didn't understand at first," one man admitted. "But seeing what you've built here, it's clear you're making a difference." The turning point came when a prominent philanthropist, inspired by their story, reached out with an offer to sponsor the center's programs. The funding allowed them to hire additional staff, upgrade their facilities, and expand their outreach efforts. The center became a hub of activity, hosting cultural festivals, family counseling sessions, and after-school programs. It was no longer just a safe space. It was a beacon of hope for the entire community. During a visit to the center, the philanthropist remarked, "What you've created here is extraordinary. It's not just a youth center. It's a symbol of what's possible when people come together." To celebrate their progress, the Williams family organized a community festival at the center. The event featured music, food, and performances from various cultural groups, showcasing the richness of diversity. As the festival reached its peak, David took the stage to address the crowd. "Today we celebrate not just our journey, but the strength of this community," he said. "Together, we've proven that love and unity can overcome any challenge." Amara joined him, her voice filled with gratitude. "This isn't just about our family. It's about all of us. Each of you has contributed to making this dream a reality." The crowd erupted in cheers, and the family felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had turned their struggles into a powerful message of hope, inspiring countless others to embrace love and acceptance. As the festival came to an end, David and Amara stood with their children, watching the sunset over the center they had built together. Jasmine, now a young leader in her own right, turned to her parents with a smile. "We've come so far," she said, "and I know we'll keep going." David wrapped an arm around Amara, his heart full. "This is just the beginning," he said. Our story isn't over. It's still being written. Jasmine sat at her desk, the sunlight streaming through the window as she scribbled notes onto a sheet of paper. She was preparing for her final presentation as part of her high school's leadership program. The theme of the project was overcoming challenges through community engagement, and Jasmine had chosen to focus on her family's journey. As she wrote, her mind wandered to the many lessons her parents had taught her over the years. She thought about the nights her mother stayed up late, sharing stories of resilience and strength, and the moments when her father encouraged her to believe in herself, despite the judgmental stares of others. On the day of the presentation, the auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and community members. Jasmine stood confidently at the podium, her voice steady as she began to speak. "My family's story isn't just about overcoming challenges," she said. "It's about finding strength in love and unity. We've faced prejudice, doubt, and setbacks, but through it all, we've grown stronger together." As she recounted the pivotal moments of their journey, the move to a diverse city, the opening of the youth center, and the establishment of her mother's shop, Roots, the audience was captivated. Jasmine's words were filled with emotion, and her poise left a lasting impression on everyone in the room. When she finished, the auditorium erupted into applause. Her parents, seated in the front row, beamed with pride. For Jasmine, this moment wasn't just about her presentation. It was about honoring her family's legacy and inspiring others to embrace their own stories. That evening, the family gathered for a celebratory dinner at home. The table was adorned with dishes that reflected their multicultural heritage, a symbol of the unity they had built through love and understanding. As they ate, the conversation flowed with laughter and memories. Jasmine's younger siblings chimed in with stories from school, while Amara and David reflected on the progress they had made as a family. "I couldn't have done it without you," Jasmine said, turning to her parents. "You've taught me what it means to be strong and to stand up for what's right." Amara reached for Jasmine's hand, her eyes glistening with tears. "You've always had that strength inside you," she said. "We just helped you see it." David raised his glass, his voice filled with pride. "To Jasmine, and to all of us," he said, "for every step we've taken, and every milestone we've reached together." The toast was met with smiles and cheers, and the family felt a profound sense of gratitude for how far they had come. Later that night, David and Amara sat on the porch, gazing at the stars. The sounds of their children's laughter drifted through the open window, filling the air with warmth. "It feels like yesterday we were struggling to make ends meet," David said. "Now, look at us." Amara smiled, leaning into his shoulder. "We've come a long way," she said. "But it's not just about where we are. It's about who we've become." They reflected on the challenges they had faced, the judgment from David's family, the prejudice from their community, and the financial hardships that tested their resilience. Each obstacle had brought them closer together, shaping them into the strong, united family they were today. "We've built something beautiful," David said. "Not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us." Word of Jasmine's presentation and the family's ongoing contributions to the community spread quickly. The youth center received an influx of support from local businesses and organizations, allowing them to expand their programs and reach even more families. One day, Amara received a letter from the mayor's office. It was an invitation to an awards ceremony, recognizing individuals and organizations that had made a significant impact on the community. At the ceremony, the Williams family was honored with the Community Unity Award. As they took the stage to accept the award, the audience gave them a standing ovation. Amara spoke on behalf of the family, her voice filled with emotion. This award belongs to everyone who has stood with us, she said. It's a testament to the power of love, resilience, and community. Together, we can create a world where every family feels seen, valued, and supported. The recognition inspired the family to dream even bigger. They decided to expand the youth center's outreach programs, focusing on providing mentorship opportunities for teenagers like Jasmine. Jasmine took an active role in the initiative, organizing workshops and events that empowered young people to embrace their identities and pursue their dreams. Her passion and leadership inspired others, and she quickly became a role model for her peers. One evening, after a particularly successful event, Jasmine approached her parents with an idea. "What if we start a scholarship program?" she suggested. "It could help kids like me who need a little extra support to achieve their goals." David and Amara exchanged a proud glance. "That's a wonderful idea," Amara said. "Let's make it happen." As the family worked on launching the scholarship program, they took a moment to reflect on their journey. They revisited the places that held special meaning to them. The park where David proposed, the shop where Amara built her dream, and the youth center that had become a beacon of hope for so many. Each milestone was a reminder of their resilience and the love that had carried them through every challenge. They knew their journey wasn't over, but they were ready to face whatever came next with the same strength and unity that had brought them this far. The Williams family had become a well-known name in their community. Their efforts to foster inclusion, resilience, and cultural pride resonated with people from all walks of life. One morning, while sipping her coffee, Amara opened a letter addressed to her and David. The bold header at the top read, "National Conference on Cultural Harmony and Social Unity." "We've been invited to speak," Amara said, her voice tinged with both excitement and disbelief. David looked up from his laptop, surprised. "At a national conference?" he asked, reaching for the letter. As he read through the details, a smile spread across his face. "This is huge, Amara. They want us to share our journey on a national platform." For a moment, they both sat in silence, letting the magnitude of the opportunity sink in. It wasn't just about their story. It was a chance to inspire others on a much larger scale. The weeks leading up to the conference were a whirlwind of activity. Amara and David spent late nights crafting their speech, revisiting pivotal moments in their journey to ensure they could convey the lessons they had learned. Jasmine offered her perspective, sharing how her experiences as a teenager in a multicultural family had shaped her worldview. One evening, as the family sat together in the living room, Amara asked, "What's the most important message we want to leave with the audience?" Jasmine, who had been quietly sketching in her notebook, looked up and said, "That love and unity are stronger than any barrier. Our story proves that." Her words struck a chord, and David nodded. "You're right, Jasmine. It's not just about what we've overcome. It's about what we've built together." They decided their speech would focus on three core themes: resilience, the power of community, and the beauty of embracing differences. Each family member contributed, ensuring the narrative reflected their shared experiences and individual perspectives. The conference was held in a sprawling convention center, its grand halls filled with attendees from across the country. Families, educators, community leaders, and activists mingled, exchanging stories and ideas about fostering inclusivity and understanding. As the Williams family arrived, they were greeted warmly by the event organizers. A guide led them to the main hall, where they would address an audience of nearly 1,000 people. David adjusted his tie nervously, while Amara took a deep breath to steady herself. Jasmine, however, seemed calm and collected. "You've got this," she said, giving her parents an encouraging smile. When it was their turn to speak, the family took the stage together, their presence commanding attention. The audience fell silent, their eyes fixed on the family that had become a symbol of hope and perseverance. David began the speech, his voice warm yet resolute. He spoke about the early days of their relationship, the challenges they faced from his family's disapproval, and the societal biases that often made their love feel like an act of defiance. "We knew this journey wouldn't be easy," he said, "but we also knew that what we had was worth fighting for." Amara took over, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She shared the struggles of raising her children as a Black single mother and the resilience it took to confront prejudice while building a life of love and unity. "There were moments when the weight of judgment felt unbearable," she admitted. "But every time I looked at my children, I found the strength to keep going. And when David joined our lives, we became even stronger." Jasmine then stepped forward, her youthful confidence lighting up the room. She spoke about the impact of her parents' love and courage on her own life, emphasizing the importance of creating a world where every child feels valued. "I've learned that being different isn't something to hide," she said. "It's something to celebrate. My family's love has shown me that our differences are our strength." As the Williams family concluded their speech, the audience erupted into applause. People rose to their feet, some wiping away tears, others clapping with fervor. The energy in the room was electric, a testament to the power of their story. Among the attendees was a renowned social activist who approached the family after their speech. "Your story is exactly what this country needs to hear right now," she said. "It's a reminder that love can bridge any divide." Amara and David exchanged humbled smiles, their hearts full. They knew they had touched lives and sparked important conversations. The conference marked a turning point for the Williams family. Their story began to gain national attention, featured in newspapers, blogs, and social media platforms. Messages poured in from families across the country, many sharing their own struggles with prejudice and expressing gratitude for the Williams message of hope. With the newfound attention, David and Amara decided to expand their efforts. They partnered with national organizations to develop programs aimed at fostering inclusivity in schools and communities. One such initiative, inspired by Jasmine's idea, was a mentorship program that paired teenagers from diverse backgrounds with supportive role models. The youth center also benefited from the family's growing influence. Donations increased, allowing them to enhance their facilities and offer new programs, including workshops on cultural appreciation and conflict resolution. One evening, as they prepared for yet another community event, David and Amara took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. "Do you ever think about where we started?" David asked, his voice tinged with wonder. "Back when it felt like the world was against us?" Amara nodded, a wistful smile on her face. "I think about it all the time," she said. "But these struggles shaped us. They made us stronger." David took her hand, his gaze steady. "And they've given us the chance to make a difference, for our family and so many others." Amara leaned into him, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. Their journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also been a testament to the transformative power of love and resilience. As the Williams family continued to share their story, they became more than a symbol of hope. They became a catalyst for change. Their efforts inspired other families to embrace their own differences and to stand united in the face of adversity. At the heart of it all was the simple truth that had guided them from the beginning. Love is stronger than any barrier. It was a lesson they carried with them, a legacy they were determined to pass on to future generations. With each step forward, the Williams family reaffirmed their commitment to building a world where every person feels seen, valued, and loved. Years had passed since David and Amara first exchanged their vows, promising to build a life filled with love, respect, and unity. Together, they had weathered countless storms, overcoming prejudice, financial struggles, and societal judgment. Now, with their family stronger than ever and their community efforts thriving, David felt it was time to honor their journey in a meaningful way. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, David cleared his throat and stood up, his eyes meeting Amara's. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Our love has been through so much, and I want to celebrate everything we've built together. Amara, I want to renew our vows. I want to promise all over again to stand by you now and always." The room fell silent, and for a moment, Amara was speechless. Then, a warm smile spread across her face, and her eyes glistened with tears. "I would love that, David," she said softly. Jasmine, ever the supportive daughter, clapped her hands together. "This is going to be amazing. Can I help plan it?" Her siblings chimed in, with their own excitement, and just like that, the Williams family began preparing for a ceremony that would not only reaffirm their love, but also reflect the strength and unity they had cultivated over the years. The family decided to hold the vow renewal ceremony in the community garden, where many of their initiatives had taken root. It was a place that symbolized growth, resilience, and the connections they had fostered. The space would be transformed into a vibrant setting, blending elements of Amara's African heritage with David's cultural roots. Amara chose a flowing gown, adorned with intricate patterns that celebrated her lineage, while David opted for a tailored suit with subtle embroidery inspired by African designs. Jasmine and her siblings took charge of decorations, incorporating colorful fabrics, fresh flowers, and handcrafted centerpieces from Amara's shop, Roots. The guest list grew quickly. Neighbors, friends, and even some of David's family members, who had once been distant, now expressed their desire to attend. The ceremony wasn't just about David and Amara. It was a celebration of unity and acceptance, a testament to how far they had come, as a family and as a community. On the day of the ceremony, the garden buzzed with life. The air was filled with the gentle hum of music, laughter, and the scent of fresh blooms. Guests arrived, their faces reflecting admiration and joy as they took in the beauty of the setting. As the ceremony began, David stood at the altar, his heart pounding as he watched Amara walk toward him. Her radiant smile and steady gaze reminded him of the very first time he saw her. Holding hands with her youngest child, she made her way down the aisle, her older children walking proudly beside her. When Amara reached David, they turned to face the crowd. Jasmine stepped forward to deliver a heartfelt introduction, her voice clear and confident. "Today, we're not just celebrating my parents' love," she began. "We're celebrating the power of resilience, the strength of family, and the beauty of unity. My mom and dad have taught us that love isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for." Her words drew nods and smiles from the audience, and a few guests wiped away tears. David and Amara stood before the officiant, their hands intertwined, as they prepared to exchange their vows. This time, their promises reflected not only their love for each other, but also the life they had built together. "Amara," David began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "When I met you, I didn't just find a partner. I found my purpose. You've taught me what it means to love without limits, to fight for what's right, and to build a home that's stronger than any storm. Today, I promise to keep growing with you, to protect our family, and to honor the love that brought us here." Amara squeezed his hands, her own voice filled with emotion, as she responded, "David, you've been my rock, my partner, and my greatest supporter. Together, we've faced challenges that could have broken us, but instead, they made us stronger. I promise to continue walking this journey with you, with faith, with love, and with an unshakable commitment to the life we've built." As they slipped new rings onto each other's fingers, a wave of applause and cheers erupted from the crowd. The joy in the air was palpable, a reflection of the love and respect the Williams family had inspired in everyone present. Among the guests were David's parents, Margaret and William. Over the years, their relationship with Amara and her children had softened. Seeing the strength of David and Amara's love and the positive impact they had on the community had slowly eroded their biases. After the ceremony, Margaret approached Amara with tentative steps. "Amara," she began, her voice uncharacteristically soft, "I want to thank you for everything, for loving David, for raising such wonderful children, and for showing us what true strength looks like." Amara, surprised but touched, responded with a warm smile. "Thank you, Margaret. It means a lot to hear that from you." The two women exchanged a brief but genuine hug, a gesture that symbolized the healing of old wounds and the beginning of a new chapter. The reception that followed was a joyous affair. Guests danced to music that blended cultural traditions, feasted on dishes that represented both David and Amara's heritages, and shared stories of how the Williams family had touched their lives. Jasmine led a toast, raising her glass high as she declared, "To love, resilience, and the family that made it all possible." Laughter and cheers filled the air as the family embraced, their bond stronger than ever. As the evening wound down, David and Amara found a quiet moment to sit together, watching their children dance and laugh with the guests. The twinkling lights above them seemed to mirror the sense of hope and joy in their hearts. "We've come so far," David said, his voice filled with gratitude. "And yet, I feel like this is just the beginning." Amara leaned her head against his shoulder, her own heart full. "It is," she agreed, "because love like this doesn't just stop. It grows, it inspires, and it creates something lasting." The vow renewal ceremony became more than just a personal milestone for the Williams family. It inspired others in their community to embrace love and unity, to overcome prejudice, and to celebrate the beauty of diversity. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, love has the power to transform lives and create a brighter future. As the Williams family stood together for a final photo that evening, their smiles radiated the strength and resilience that had defined their journey. They were no longer just a family. They were a beacon of hope, a testament to the unyielding power of love. The Williams family had come a long way. From their first meeting at the charity event to the vow renewal ceremony, every step of their journey had been a testament to resilience, love, and an unwavering commitment to one another. Now, as they sat together in their cozy living room, surrounded by photos capturing their milestones, David and Amara reflected on how far they had come. David held a framed photo of their wedding day, his thumb brushing over the edges of the picture. "I never imagined our story would touch so many lives," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. Amara smiled, her eyes focused on their children, who were flipping through a scrapbooking Jasmine had created. "It's not just our story anymore," she replied. "It's become something much bigger, a message of hope for others." Jasmine looked up from the scrapbook, her voice steady yet filled with pride. "You've both shown us what it means to love without fear, and to stand strong, no matter the challenges. That's the legacy you're leaving behind." With their family bond stronger than ever, David and Amara began focusing on their next big project, creating a foundation to support multicultural families facing societal challenges. The idea stemmed from their own experiences, as they wanted to provide resources, mentorship, and a sense of belonging for others navigating similar struggles. The foundation, aptly named the Unity Project, aimed to break down barriers and build bridges between communities. It would offer counseling services, educational workshops, and scholarships for children from diverse backgrounds. Amara envisioned the project as a space where families could find solace and strength, just as they had within their own home. David, always meticulous, poured his energy into the logistical side of the foundation. He reached out to local businesses, community leaders, and even former colleagues, rallying support for their mission. Amara, with her natural charisma and empathy, became the face of the project, sharing their story at events and inspiring others to join their cause. As the Unity Project gained momentum, media outlets began taking notice. David and Amara were invited to share their story on a popular national morning show. Nervous but determined, the couple prepared to face the cameras, knowing this was an opportunity to amplify their message. Seated on a brightly lit set, David and Amara held hands as the host introduced them to the audience. Today, we're joined by a remarkable couple whose story of love and perseverance has inspired countless families across the country. Please welcome David and Amara Williams. The applause was warm and genuine, and as the host began asking questions, David and Amara spoke candidly about their journey. They recounted the challenges they had faced, from societal judgment to financial struggles, and the triumphs that had defined their family's story. What would you say has been the most important lesson you've learned through all of this? The host asked. Amara leaned forward, her voice steady and heartfelt. That love isn't just a feeling, it's an action. It's choosing to stand by each other every single day, even when it's hard. And it's believing that we can create a better world for our children, one where they don't have to face the same challenges we did. David nodded in agreement. It's also about understanding and embracing differences. Our family has shown us that diversity isn't something to fear, it's something to celebrate. The interview resonated deeply with viewers, sparking conversations across social media and within communities. Messages poured in from families who felt seen and inspired by David and Amara's story. The Unity Project became a nationwide movement, with chapters opening in cities across the country. Each chapter provided support and resources tailored to the needs of its local community, ensuring that no family felt isolated or unsupported. Amara often traveled to these chapters, meeting with families and sharing their stories of resilience. At one event, a young mother approached her, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice trembling. "I thought I was alone, but your story gave me the courage to keep going." Back home, David worked tirelessly to expand the scholarship fund, ensuring that children from multicultural families had access to education and opportunities. He partnered with schools and universities, advocating for more inclusive policies and programs. As their children grew older, David and Amara encouraged them to take an active role in the Unity Project. Jasmine, now a college student, became a passionate advocate for the foundation, using her voice to inspire younger generations. At a youth summit hosted by the Unity Project, Jasmine took the stage to deliver a speech. Her words were powerful, drawing from her own experiences as a child navigating prejudice and finding strength in her family. "My parents taught me that love is the strongest force in the world," she said. "It's what kept our family together, and it's what drives us to make a difference. I want every child here to know that you are worthy of love and respect, just as you are. The applause was thunderous, and as Jasmine stepped off the stage, David and Amara couldn't hide their pride. Their daughter was carrying forward the legacy they had worked so hard to build. On a crisp autumn evening, the Williams family gathered in their backyard, the air filled with laughter and the scent of a warm meal. It was a rare moment of quiet amidst their busy lives, and they cherished it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, David raised a glass in a toast. "To family," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "To the love that brought us here, and the legacy we'll continue to build." Amara raised her glass in return, her eyes shining. "And to the future," she added, "because the best is yet to come." Their children joined in the toast, their voices mingling with their parents in a chorus of hope and unity. Together, the Williams family looked ahead, knowing that their journey was far from over. They had more lives to touch, more barriers to break, and more love to share. In that moment, beneath the stars, they knew that their story, a story of love, resilience, and acceptance, would continue to inspire for generations to come. Thank you for joining us on this deeply emotional journey of love, resilience, and the power of unity. David and Amara's story reminds us that no matter the challenges we face, love and determination can build bridges that last a lifetime. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What part of their journey resonated with you the most? Share your reflections in the comments below. Your voice matters, and your perspective could inspire someone else today. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have so many more heartfelt stories coming your way. Stories of strength, hope, and the beauty of the human spirit. Together, let's continue to celebrate the power of connection and the courage it takes to create lasting change. Until next time, take care, spread love, and we'll see you in the next chapter.